Okay, a lot of very general terms here, starting with, cellular, structures, because you can have diseases of the cell membrane, of the nucleus, of the mitochondria. You can have, a variety of problems with just histological, tissue problems, talking about a tumor, a cancerous tumor, what's the difference and how do you describe them differently. So body structure, color, we're going to have several different colors because you can have a melanoma, which is a black tumor. You can have a variety of different diseases that actually involve you changing color or your blood changing color and whatever. So, and oncology refers to tumor, the study of tumors. We think of oncologists as being cancer doctors. Well, they are, because they study tumors and they tell you whether they're cancerous tumors or not cancerous tumors. But they're all onco something or others. So let's start from the basics. The cell, the basic living structure in the human body, is kind of like a single-celled animal. It has its own reproductive mechanisms, its own way to eat and breathe and get rid of waste products. Tissues are groups of cells that get together to form a basically single function. So you can have a lot of cells, and they can be somewhat different, but they all get together and form one major function, and that would be a tissue. You put a bunch of tissues together to produce a variety of functions, and you have an organ, the liver, the heart. They're made up of a lot of different kind of tissues. And then a system is made up of a bunch of organs. So the cardiovascular system has the heart, blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, lymph nodes, spleen. There are a lot of things that are involved in an overall system, and so it can do a variety of functions. Within the cell, you have the cell membrane, which is a very complicated semi-permeable structure that lets in the good stuff and keeps out the bad stuff. The cytoplasm, or cytosol, is the goo inside the cell. It's the liquid inside the cell, mostly water, but it's a little thicker than that. It's full of proteins, and it has a variety of other structures, and it also has a lot of electrolytes inside, particularly potassium. The nucleus, containing a nucleolus, but the nucleus, for our point of view, is going to be fine. It's the structure inside the cell that contains our DNA for replication of the cell itself or creation of proteins to do particular jobs that the cell might need. The nucleus contains chromosomes. We have 23 pairs of chromosomes. One set came from dad, one set came from mom. So we have 23 pairs. The 23rd pair is the sex chromosome, the XY, that determines whether you're male or female. And on those chromosomes, those are big, long DNA strands, and they contain genes, which are smaller structures that are, they decide exactly what is going to happen with you. You'll have a gene for eye color, and you'll have a gene for or a variety of genes that would determine how tall you are, whether you're a big person or a skinny person, your hair color, and you get one of those from each parent also, and so you have, you have the possibility of having a dominant gene from mom, a recessive one from dad, so you have the hair color that mom says you should have. So that's the way the cell is set up, and we can have all kinds of diseases and problems that come from chromosomal abnormalities, gene abnormalities, problems with the nucleus itself, or other structures inside the cell. So the cell membrane, the cytosol inside it, or cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is actually the older term for it. Cytosol is used now. You have the genes, the chromosomes, which are the long, skinny structures, a very tightly coiled DNA strand, and within that you have the individual genes that determine characteristics. Tissues are then groups of similar cells, and they come in several different types. Muscle tissue is designed to contract and produce movement. We're going to have striated skeletal muscle. It's called striated because it's striped looking under a microscope. We have smooth muscle, which surrounds our blood vessels, our stomach, our intestines. And we have cardiac muscle, which is the kind that causes our heart to beat. So we have 3 different types of muscle tissue. Each of those 3 types can have its own set of problems and therefore has its own set of medical terms that go along with it. Nervous tissue are primarily nerves. A nerve is a whole bunch of nerve cells. You have a nerve body. You have an axon that takes the signal from the nerve body down to its target cell, and then a neurotransmitter that will be released down there. And nerves have a tendency to contain nerve fibers or nerve cells that are going in both directions. You'll have sensory nerves coming back toward you to tell you what went on, and then motor nerves that send the signal out so you can do something about it. Connective tissue are your tendons, your ligaments, your bones, and various other kinds of fibrous connective tissue that hold you together. Blood is also a connective tissue. It connects all parts of your body by sending hormones back and forth and signaling molecules. And epithelial tissue is a lining that covers your skin, it covers your airways, it covers the walls of your blood vessels and the walls of your intestines. And so each of these, you can have an epithelioma, which is a tumor of epithelial tissue. You can have a fibroma, which is fibrous connective tissue. You can have a lipoma, like I had removed out of my neck, which is a lipid-based tumor. And so each one of these is going to have its own set of medical terms that describes what it is and what's going on with it. The tissues then form organs such as the heart, the liver, the lungs, pancreas, spleen, also known as viscera. If you're eviscerated, you just committed hara-kiri and everything falls out. And then you form those organs into your systems. And much of the rest of the course after today is going to be going through system after system after system. What tissues, cells, and organs and stuff does the cardiovascular system have? What are the diseases called? What are the surgical procedures called that fix those things when they go wrong? So this is kind of laying the groundwork, and once we get past this, we'll be doing the integumentary system. We'll actually do that today. That's the skin. Respiratory system, urinary system, cardiovascular system, the renal system, and endocrine system, your hormones and the way they signal the body. These organs are contained in your body cavities, and we talked some about that in the last one with the quadrants and the abdominopelvic cavities and the like. The cranial cavity contains the brain, the spinal cavity is the spinal cord, and that's your central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord are contained in those two cavities. The thoracic cavity has the heart and lungs and a couple of tubes going down it, the esophagus, so you can swallow. Abdominal cavity, most of your viscera, stomach, spleen, pancreas, liver, kidneys, most of your intestines, large and small. Pelvic cavity, down really low, urination, defecation, reproduction. Just the end of the sigmoid colon and the rectum, the bladder, ovaries, if you're female. Thoracic, abdomino-pelvic. And there's actually a little membrane that separates the pelvic cavity from the abdominal cavity. Cranial, spinal, the main. And they're all surrounded by these pleural membranes that can become inflamed. So let's look at these structures and give them their medical names. Adeno is the combining form. Aden is just the word root, but we always put the O on the end just because it's, makes it easier to say and easier to stick on something. Adeno is a gland. And don't panic with all these millions of words, because we're going to use adeno for every body system. Cyto, we're talking about the cell. It doesn't matter what system it is. We're going to use it over and over and over. So you're going to see these. So adeno is a gland. Cyto is a cell. Epithelio is epithelium. That's an easy one. Fibro is connective tissue, because connective tissue tends to be fibrous. Histo is tissue in general. Karyo means kernel, and that's the nucleus of a cell. So if you have karyolysis, it means that your nucleus is bursting and falling apart. Lipo is lipid, that's fat. So my lipoma was a fat tumor. Myo is muscle, and occasionally myso, M-Y-S, if it works better as part of the word. But myo, cardiomyopathy, is heart muscle disease, cardiomyopathy. Neuro is a nerve. Organo refers to an organ, any organ. Sarco is another term used for muscle. Usually we'll see it in terms of a cancerous muscle condition of some kind. Systemo is the system. And viscero is the viscera, or internal organs. So, call them out. What's tissue? Histo. It's one that doesn't necessarily make sense. Organo is pretty easy. So is systemo, for system. But histo. What's the cell? Cyto, C-Y-T, system O. They didn't put it for the nucleus. Remember what nucleus is? Karyo and organo. Nerve tissue, neuro. Neurophysiology, neuroma, neuro. Epithelium, that's an easy one. Epithelio. Connective, remember that one? Fibromyalgia, the thing that they're always advertising on the news that you're supposed to take their medicine for it, So, since algia means pain, myo means muscle, and fibro means connective tissue, what do you think this condition is? It's pain in your muscles and connective tissue. It's like a diffuse pain, musculoskeletal kind of pain. And muscle is myo. This in particular is that striated skeletal muscle. See how striped it looks? And that's why it's called that. Smooth muscle is built differently and it looks smooth. That's why it's called smooth. Some things that are related to these. Cancer, O. You can be cancerous. You can have a cancerous tumor, Carcino is another term for cancer, like a carcinoma is a cancerous tumor. Etio, E-T-I, it's one we'll see a lot. That's the cause. The etiology is unknown in muscular dystrophy. We don't know the cause of it necessarily. We know what the signs and symptoms are, but the etiology may not be understood, or maybe it is, in which case they can tell you what the cause is. To know something is to have knowledge of it, G and O. So know that knowledge, but also prognosis is the ahead of time knowing what will happen, prognosis. Iatro is a term meaning that it was caused by the medical community, caused by the procedure that you had. An iatrogenic condition is something that you got because you went to the hospital. Maybe it was a side effect that you had of a drug that you took or something. Maybe they cut off the wrong leg. That's actually called, it wasn't caused by the physician, by the care. If you caught it in the hospital, there are other terms for that. If it just happens to be something that you caught because you were there, as opposed it was caused by the doctor, squirting the wrong stuff in your eye. Leo means smooth. So a leiomyoma is a smooth muscle tumor. Onco is a tumor. It doesn't have to be cancerous, but an oncologist is someone who studies tumors. Patho, we know, is disease. We saw that before. Pathy, if it's used at the end of the word. If it's early in the word, you might have to put a combining vowel after it. But if it's a suffix, cardiomyopathy, cardiomyopathy, it just ends with a Y and ends. Rhabdo means rod-like. And so rhabdo refers to striated skeletal muscle. So a rhabdomyosarcoma would be a cancerous tumor of striated skeletal muscle. Whereas a leiomyosarcoma would be a smooth muscle tumor. Somato is a general term meaning body. Body. Yes, the somatic nervous system moves the body, and so it operates your skeletal muscle. So soma, and the soma of a nerve cell is another term for the body, the cell body.
So that kind of makes sense, like acetomycin and stuff is within the muscle, then, right? Myosin.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll actually find that a lot of words you already know, suddenly you'll understand where they came from now. What about colors? We have lots of colors in our bodies. Chromo just means color. None of you are old enough to remember Kodachrome film, and because that were color slides. Kodachrome, the term chrome. And we have cytochromes, which are structures inside our mitochondria that help produce oxidative energy. And so they're brightly colored. And so they got the term cell-colored, the cytochromes. Chloro means green. Chlorophyll, that's easy to remember. Chlorophyll makes leaves green. Cyano is blue. Cyan is actually a color you can buy at Ace, and get your paint mixed up that way. But cyanosis happens when if you stop breathing, you turn blue. So, that becomes kind of important. Erythro is red. So our erythrocytes are our red blood cells. But we can also have erythrema, which is a reddening of the face. Leuko means white. Leukocytes are white blood cells. Melano is black. Melanoma is a black tumor. And xantho is yellow. You turn yellow if you have jaundice. If your liver's not working, your eyes turn yellow and your face turns yellow and you turn yellow. A variety of prefixes that we can add on to the fronts of all of these things. Dia means across, thorough, complete, the diameter of a circle as it goes all the way across it. A diagnosis. Dia means full across, G-N-O, knowledge condition. In other words, you understand what's wrong with the person. I have come to a full knowledge of their condition, diagnosis. Dys means abnormal. So if I'm in distress, that's, bad. If I have dyspnea, I'm having a hard time breathing, I have abnormal breathing. Hyper means too much or too high. Hypo means too little or too low. And we talked about that in the back of the room earlier. You had, hypogastric is below the stomach, but also hypothyroidism means your thyroid is working too little, too low. Meta means many or beyond or dividing. So metastasis is what happens when you have cancer and it spreads. And we'll cover this again, but this is beyond stasis. Stasis is sitting still. Beyond stasis. Now this tumor that was here is now everywhere. Meta. Neo is new. A neonate is a new kid, new baby. A neoplasm is a new growth. Usually not a good thing. And pro is ahead of time or early or leading to. We'll see how we use that as we get there. Now look at our suffixes. Oh my gosh. The good thing is we will use every one of these in every system. Here's our ick and owl and us pertaining to. Remember owl we didn't have, when you first saw it there, but it means pertaining to. So, renal. Reno is kidney. Renal pertains to the kidney. Venous, hepatic, meat pertains to. And you're going to have to learn which is which. Adden is the gland. Remember we said that. A cyte is a cell. Gen means the creation of, like Genesis. Genic has the ability to create. So if something is carcinogenic, it is a carcinogen. It is a substance that can do this, so it has a carcinogenic effect. So pertaining to the creation of. A logist is a studier of something. So physiology, physiology. Actually, it means the study of nature based on how nature makes your body work is where that came from. What is the natural processes in your body? Well, let's study it. So that's physiology. Histology is the study of tissues because histo is tissues. So the logist is the person. I'm a physiologist. I study physiology. Physiology is the study itself. Megaly means overlarge. So cardiomegaly means you have an enlarged heart. Oid, it looks like something, appears to be something. Think about a humanoid. You know, looks like a human, but it's really a robot. Okay? So oid. Oma is a tumor. We've used that quite a bit. Osis is a improper condition of some kind. Pathy is the disease. Plasia is growth. Hyperplasia means it's growing too big. Hypoplasia means it's not developing or growing enough. Tissue growth is plasm. A neoplasm is a growth of some new tissue that you didn't expect to be there. A sarcoma is a cancerous tumor of usually connective tissues or epithelial tissues. Cis is a condition. So dialysis, a cross, break apart of blood condition kind of thing. And stasis means static or not moving. So if you have blood stasis, it stops moving, or venous stasis, it usually stops in the veins, it tends to form blood clots. So venous stasis is a bad thing. Metastasis is like beyond stasis, and it means your cancer is spreading. So that's not a good thing either. Now look at these. Remember I said patho. If it's early in the word, you might have to put something after it because it's going to have something, might have to use a combining vowel. But if it's at the end, it's just pathy, cardiomyopathy. Sarcoma, if it's at the end. If this is talking about the tumor and then you're going to describe it further, you might just use sarco. But if it's a tumor at the end, it's a rhabdomyosarcoma. You just play it out. Cyto, so cyto something or other means it's going to refer to a cell that you're going to describe, or it's an erythrocyte. It's a red blood cell. So at the end, you just finish off the word with it. We talked about this too. A gen means it is a substance that can produce something. Okay, you can have things, you can produce blood vessels, and they can be angiogenic, or you can produce cancer, carcinogenic. But the substance itself is a carcinogen. The property it has is carcinogenic. Cytogenic means cell producing. You might have substances that cause cell reproduction to speed up when you need it, especially when you're a baby.
So, Dr. Stewart, the term hypoallergenic, then that it would tend to cause like a sub-allergic...
Causes less allergic reaction response. An allergen is something that causes an allergic response. It generates an allergic effect. And if you buy shampoo that's hypoallergenic, it has less of that in it. So you're looking to get a hypoallergenic thing if you tend to be allergic to shampoos. Disease is which one? That's too easy. So let's look at some of the actual diseases, tumors, and whatnot. What would be an adenocarcinoma? What's adon? A gland. Cancerous tumor. Carcinoma. Means carcino means cancerous. Oma means tumor. Adenocarcinoma. What's an adenoma? gland tumor. But is it cancerous? I don't know. Nobody's told me yet. Not necessarily. It might be benign. Carcinoma is a cancer, abbreviated California. Chloroma, what would that be? A green tumor. A green tumor. Epithelioma, tumor of epithelial tissue. Fibroma, what kind of tissue? Connective tissue. Fibrosarcoma, what's the difference here? It's a cancerous connective tissue tumor. Leiomyoma, smooth muscle tumor. How about leiomyosarcoma? Cancerous smooth muscle tumor. See, after you do this a million times, how it's actually going to start falling into place? It sounds like a lot of stuff right now. Lipoma, fat tumor. I should have had my whole head removed. Liposarcoma, cancerous fat tumor. How about a melanocarcinoma? Black. Melanoma is just a black tumor. It wouldn't have to be cancerous. Although by common usage, when you have melanoma, you have cancer, skin cancer. Myoma would be a tumor of what? Muscle. A neoplasm is new tissue growth of some kind, usually a tumor. Neuroma, nerve tumor. Rhabdomyoma, remember rhabdo? Striated, rod-like, skeletal muscle tumor, skeletal, cancerous tumor. And sarcoma just means a cancerous tumor, and it's usually connective and muscle tissues. So if you're going to pronounce these words correctly, there's a few, guides here that will help with the pronunciation, especially if you look it up in a medical dictionary or online. You know, it's so easy to go to type in anything that you've heard and say medical term and just Google it. And you'll get WebMD and you'll get all these different things, and they'll not only describe what it is, but they'll give you the correct pronunciation for it. And the pronunciation, the way that they write out the pronunciation is very similar to what we learned in our original English classes and stuff, but not exactly the same necessarily. Sometimes there are a couple of little things that are different. So doctor, they'll do it as phonetically as they can. If there's a long vowel, it's A-E-I-O-U. Okay, so I in spine, you wouldn't say spin. That would be if it's a short vowel. And I always learned to do the little thing like that over a short vowel. But in this case, if it doesn't have the long sign, it's a short one. So, a, e, I, o, So cut instead of cute. And then they will put emphasis where it's supposed to be. Altogether, the most emphasized syllable is in caps. The second most emphasized is in italics. So it's pancreatitis. Pan is bigger than cre. Pancreatitis. Uh-oh. Which one's done right? What's wrong with this one? Yeah. The O is not separated. Okay, so let's look at some different body structures and what we might call them as a result, and some words pertaining to them. So cyte or cyto is cell. So cytogenic would be a substance or a gene perhaps that produces cell proliferation and increase the number of cells. What would cytoid be? Looks like a cell. Cytology would be the study of cells. Cytoplasm, the goo inside the cell. Dysplasia. What is plasia? Like neoplasm is a growth of tissue. What would dysplasia be? Abnormal bad growth. I mean, it could be these cells have become cancerous. Now they're showing dysplasia because they're growing differently than they're supposed to. Epithelial. Erythrocyte is a red blood cell. Erythrocytosis, an abnormal condition. Osis. Halitosis is really bad breath, right? Erythrocytosis, a condition of too many red blood cells, actually. Histology is what? Histology? Study of tissues. Hyperplasia, too much growth. Hypoplasia, not enough. A karyocyte is any cell that has a nucleus. Most cells do. Bacteria don't, though. Karyoplasm is the juice inside the nucleus. Take a quick break, stretch a little bit as needed. Okay, we're back. So if you're having excess development in a tissue, okay, what is a term for development? Not exactly. It's not a new growth of new stuff. If you're just overgrowing the same cells that you already had, what happens when you lift weights and your muscles get big? What's that called? Hypertrophy. Okay? Hypertrophy is excess development. A new growth of something new that you hadn't seen before is a neoplasm. Okay, now there are a couple of terms here that they're kind of built from word parts, but they are a little strange in that seems like they're missing something. For instance, neoplasm means new. That's a prefix, and plasm is a suffix. You know, I mean, it's not a actual structure. It's a material growth kind of stuff. So every once in a while we will have a word that is stuck together because we know what it means. So a neoplasm, we all agree what it means, but it is not exactly definable in specific word parts. You know, it doesn't have all of the parts that it normally would need. An ellipsis is where you leave out something that is also understood. For instance, erythrocyte, it doesn't mean red blood cell, it means red cell. It should be erythrohemocyte would be a red blood cell, but the only red cells we have are red blood cells, so erythrocyte works. And so does leukocyte, white cell. And so, by agreement, erythrocyte is red blood cells and leukocytes are white blood cells. There they are. Red blood cells for carrying hemoglobin and carrying oxygen. White blood cells, which are part of the immune system. And we will spend more time with those when we actually get into the cardiovascular system, immune system, and so forth. So here we have leukocyte. It's built from word parts, even though it's missing one. Leukocytosis, this is an abnormal condition of white blood cells. Too many white blood cells. If you have a bad infection, you will experience leukocytosis. You may make way too many white blood cells. Lipoid, it looks like fat. Myopathy, muscle disease. Organomegaly, an enlargement of any organ. You can have splenomegaly, you can have cardiomegaly. Somatic, pertaining to the body, like the somatic nervous system. Systemic pertains to an entire system. So you can have a systemic problem with your cardiovascular system. Visceral pertains to your guts, to your organs, internal organs. Which one's red blood cell? Which one is a cell that has a nucleus? Karyocyte. Okay, so let's dig a little farther into some of these terms. What is us pertaining to, like venous? So pertaining, it's a cancerous tumor. It has cancerous properties. A carcinogen is a substance that can create cancer, and therefore it has properties which are carcinogenic. Cyanosis, a condition of being blue. I'm so blue. Diagnosis, this is a cross-knowledge condition. A condition where I understand all of it. I have diagnosed your problem. And this is the first of the X's. DX is a diagnosis. A prognosis is a PX. A prescription is an RX. We see these abbreviations everywhere. Etiology, what would this be? What's logi of anything? Study of the causes of disease. Iatrogenic, caused by something the doctor did, or nurse, the medical person. Iatrology, the study of problems that are caused by health care providers. Metastasis has moved beyond stasis. You now have cancer cells going beyond the original tumor. Oncogenic creates what? Tumors, not necessarily cancer, maybe. Oncologist, the studier of, yes, the doctor of tumors. Oncology is the study itself. Organic refers to referring to organs. It is of organic origin. It doesn't mean you don't use pesticides in your corn. Pathogenic causes disease. A pathologist, studier of diseases. Pathology, the study of diseases. Prognosis, this is ahead of time knowing thing. So your prognosis is that you will get well in about 6 months. So I know ahead of time what's going to happen to you. I have pre-knowledge. Xanthochromic, yellow color. Xanthosis, a condition of being yellow. Like if you have, hepatitis and liver problems. Jaundice. About 1 million words that we will again use on and on and on. These are not built from word parts, though. These have their own structure. You have to memorize them. A lot of these you already know from general usage, but be more specific for medical usage. Apoptosis, if you've had any basic biology, you know is a pre-programmed explosion of your cells when they get too damaged to heal themselves. They have a gene that actually turns on and causes the cell to self-destruct, so you can replace it with a good one. That's a good thing, unless it goes out of control. You can cause apoptosis with the wrong kind of treatment, the wrong kind of drugs or whatever, but apoptosis is normally something you want your cells to do when they get old and creaky. Benign means it's non-cancerous. It doesn't mean that it can't hurt you. A benign tumor in your head can smash your brain and kill you. Benign just means non-cancerous. Biological therapy. This is where you are given treatments that cause your own immune system to fight harder for you. Biological therapy. They'll take out some of your immune cells and they will program them to fight a disease or fight cancer better. Or they'll take out some of your cancer cells and put markers on them so they're more easy for your immune system to identify. So your own immune system does the work. The biological therapy is to make it work better. Carcinoma in situ That means it's situated in its original spot. The book likes to call it pre-cancer. Not exactly. It can be cancer that hasn't spread anywhere yet. It hasn't even started sending out little feet into the surrounding tissues. It's sometimes called stage 1 cancer. It hasn't spread at all. Chemotherapy, or chemo, is where you take poison that's supposed to kill cancer faster than it kills you. And some of it's working really well, better and better these days. Encapsulated means that whatever it is inside a solid structure and can't get out or doesn't get out. The lipoma I had was encapsulated. It wasn't trying to spread anywhere else. It was just a blob within kind of a little sheath. To exacerbate is to make something worse. To ameliorate is to make it better. Aspirin will ameliorate a headache. A crying baby will exacerbate it. Hospice is home care for serious, life-threatening diseases, often but not always cancer. The term idiopathic we'll see a lot. It means we don't know the cause. Idiopathic hyperthyroidism, your thyroid's working too fast and there's not a specific reason, it just is. Idiopathic. Inflammation, we know what that is. It means it's inflamed. It's actually the first step of your immune response, sends in a bunch of immune cells, dilates your blood vessels to make, access to the area better, and it swells up and gets hot and hurts. That's inflammation. In vitro, it means in a test tube or outside the body. It could be studied in vitro. You take something out and you look at it. It could be created like a test tube baby in vitro. In vivo, it means you're studying it or doing something inside while it's still living inside the body. Viva Las Vegas, in vivo, live. Malignant means cancerous, the opposite of benign. Benign is not cancerous, malignant is. Morbidity is disease-causing. So the morbidity of a disease might be very high. It makes everybody really sick who gets it. But the mortality may be very low. It rarely kills anybody. Mortality is how death-producing it is. Palliative just makes you feel better. So you might have part of a tumor removed just because it's pressing on a nerve and hurts a lot. It's not going to make you better. It just makes you feel better for a while. Radiation therapy or X-ray therapy. X-rays. And remission means the disease is halted in its place. It may start up again at some point. It's not cured, but it is no longer bothersome at that point. Carcinoma in situ. The first cancerous cells are growing, but it has not spread into surrounding tissues. Which of these can be literally translated? C, adenocarcinoma. Cancerous tumor of a gland. There are some plurals that are quite commonly used. Usually if you change an I to an E, it makes it plural. Testis is one testicle. Testes are more than one. Vertebra is one. Vertebrae is more. Thorax, thoraces. Can't be thorax. That doesn't work very well. Thoraces. Let's look at some abbreviations. California, carcinoma. Chemo, for chemotherapy. DX, remember, is diagnosis. PX, prognosis. RX, prescription. Mets are metastasized blobs of cancer cells that have left the original carcinoma in situ, have gone somewhere else, and now they're starting to grow in your bones or your brain or someplace. Red blood cell, white blood cell, and X-ray therapy. And this is also called radiation therapy. It's used to kill cancerous cells. A 54-year-old woman presented in the office with a 3-week history of bloody diarrhea. And by the way, the term rhea means flow. Dia means all the way through. Diarrhea, I mean, we know what that is, but that's where the word comes from. Diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. What do you think that is? Inflammation of the colon. At age 25 years, returned for a colonoscopy. It's a scope of the colon, so you can look in and see what's wrong. Examination reveals suspicious lesion in part of the colon. A cytology specimen, study of the cell. It could be a histology, could be a study of the whole tissue, or looking at individual cells. Cytology. The pathologist, the studier or doctor of disease, made a diagnosis, full knowledge, understanding of carcinoma of the colon, cancerous tumor of the colon. Advanced dysplasia. What does that mean? Abnormal growth. I mean, these cells have become something they aren't supposed to be. It's not exactly a neoplasm. A neoplasm is a new bunch of cells that weren't there before. You don't know exactly where they came from. Dysplasia meant like the lining of your airways, those cells morphed into cancer cells and now they're growing out of control. So that's dysplasia. No evidence of metastasis, though. That's a good thing. Remove the entire colon because there was such a high risk of it coming back. Referred to a tumor doctor for consideration of chemotherapy. Prognosis, her ahead of time knowledge of what's likely to happen was pretty positive. They think they got it all. It hadn't metastasized. They did not decide to do radiation or biological therapy. Okay, so back to chapter 2 on the practice things.